Welcome to The Explainer. So, today we're diving into a pretty seismic shift in the American banking landscape. We're talking about a massive new wave of mergers that's literally changing who you bank with, and maybe more importantly, why.
So what does a number this big, $23.3 billion, have to do with the bank on your corner? Well, that's the total value of bank mergers announced just this year. It's a huge signal that a major consolidation trend is really picking up speed. Okay, let's dive in.
All right, so here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at the sheer scale of this merger frenzy. Then, we'll dig into why it's all happening right now. We'll meet the new power couples making the biggest deals, and finally, we'll try to figure out, what does it all mean for the future of banking? Okay, let's kick things off with the what. Just how big is this merger frenzy? You see, for the last few years, big bank deals were pretty much on ice. But that has changed, and I mean dramatically. It feels like the dam has officially broken. And I mean, the growth here is just explosive. Take a look at this. The total value of deals announced this year, it hasn't just edged past previous years. It's already blown past the last 2 years combined. We are seeing a massive, massive surge in the size of these deals. And hey, it's not just about the value of the deals either. The actual number of deals is picking up speed. This year is already on pace to have more mergers than all of last year. And to give you a real sense of the momentum we're talking about, July of 2025, it had the most announced mergers in a single month since back in 2021. So yeah, the pace is absolutely accelerating. Okay, so that brings us to the big question. Why is this all happening now? Well, the biggest reason for this wave, it isn't coming from Wall Street. It's actually a major policy shift coming out of Washington, D.C. that's basically given banks the confidence to make these moves. And really, at the heart of this is a pretty simple but powerful change in policy. See, the previous administration had some pretty tough merger guidelines in place, which meant more robust reviews. But this summer, the current administration scrapped those guidelines and started pushing for faster deal reviews. I mean, that sent a crystal clear signal to the entire industry. The path for mergers is open for business. And this quote from Jeffrey Levine really nails it. When you have currency, it certainly helps to have a friendly administration. Now you have both. So you've got this perfect storm, right? The banks have the capital, the currency, to actually go out and make these deals. And at the same time, they've got this much friendlier regulatory climate to get them approved. It's that 1-2 punch that has really opened the floodgates. But it's not just about politics and regulation. Beyond that big green light from Washington, there are some really powerful economic and tech forces at play here, basically pushing banks to join forces just to survive and compete in this changing world. I mean, if you put yourself in a bank's shoes, the logic is pretty hard to argue with. For starters, everyone's expecting interest rates to fall, which makes financing a huge deal way cheaper. At the same time, you've got this immense pressure to get bigger just to compete with the megabanks. And the cost of technology and hiring top talent, they're just skyrocketing. You throw in customers demanding better and better digital services, and for a lot of these banks, merging just becomes the clearest path forward. So all of this brings us to the who. Let's meet some of the new power couples. We can really see all these different forces in action when we look at some of the year's biggest deals, which are creating this whole new class of super regional banks. So here are the biggest combinations that have been announced this year. You've got deals like the merger between Pinnacle and Synovus, that's what they call a merger of equals, or PNC buying up First Bank. These aren't small moves, they're fundamentally reshaping regional markets and creating these new powerhouses that have a huge footprint across multiple states. But honestly, the one deal that really showed everyone what was possible under this new regime was Capital One buying Discover. I mean, this was a massive $35 billion transaction. It faced a ton of opposition from consumer groups, but the fact that it was ultimately approved, well, that sent a powerful message to the rest of the industry, that even the biggest, most ambitious mergers could get that green light. And this move really highlights that other key driver we were talking about, right? That urgent need for mid-sized players to get bigger, to gain scale. By combining, Capital One and Discover created an absolute behemoth in the credit card world. And that positions them way better to compete with the handful of giant megabanks that really dominate the industry, like a JPMorgan Chase. Okay, so let's tie this all together and get to the so what of it all. What does all this consolidation actually mean for the banking landscape, and maybe more importantly, for all of us as customers? Well, a lot of experts are describing what's happening as the barbell approach, and it's a great analogy. So picture a barbell.
On one heavy end, you've got the giant national mega banks that do all the everyday transactional stuff. On the other heavy end, you've got the small, local community banks that really thrive on personal relationships. And everything in the middle, all those mid-sized banks, that's what's getting squeezed out, acquired, and consolidated. And this whole consolidation thing is creating this really fascinating dynamic. Tom Michaud from Keefe, Bruyette & Woods puts it perfectly. He says there's now scarcity value to the banks of size. Basically, it's turning into a race for these mid-sized banks to either be the one buying or be the one that gets bought. As the number of good targets shrinks, the ones that are left become way more valuable. So there's this real urgency to make a move before you get left behind.
But here's where it gets interesting. There's a twist. It's not all that straightforward. Remember that big $8.6 billion merger between Pinnacle and Synovus we mentioned? Well, when they announced it, investors didn't exactly cheer. In fact, they did the opposite. They sold off the stocks, sending both of them down by double digits. And that right there raises a really critical question about this whole trend. And that leaves us with one final, kind of provocative thought to chew on. Bank deals are absolutely booming, but do investors actually like them? You've got all these executives and Wall Street deal makers racing to put these combinations together, but the market's reaction suggests it's not at all clear if investors believe these mergers will create any real long-term value. It's a great question, isn't it? That one is still very much up in the air.